There are cars that earn the respect of the streets, and others that earn the hatred of the police. Some because they're unsafe, others because they're the favorite tool of criminals, and there are even models so fast that they simply couldn't be caught. In this video, we're going to find out which cars are the most hated by law enforcement, why some have been banned, and how a simple purchase decision could turn into a nightmare for governments, police, and thousands of families. From Mexico to the United Kingdom, including high-risk chases in the United States, get ready to discover the cars that challenged authority, and sometimes even beat it. Imagine you buy a new car to take your kids to school. You choose it because it's cheap, gets good gas mileage, and is easy to find. But what they don't tell you is that, in an accident, that car could be a death trap. And that's no exaggeration. That vehicle has been linked to more than 4,000 deaths in Mexico alone. For decades, the Nissan Tsuru was the favorite of thousands of drivers in Latin America. Taxi drivers, families, students, everyone trusted it. The reason? It was affordable, easy to maintain, and didn't break down easily. But that low price came with a hidden cost. It didn't offer even the most basic safety features. In crash tests, the result was clear and chilling. 0 stars, not even 1. The problem wasn't just with the manufacturer. The authorities allowed it. Buyers ignored it. And for years, the most unsafe car in Mexico kept being sold as if nothing was wrong. It's estimated that between 2007 and 2012, the Tsuru was involved in more than 4,100 deaths in traffic accidents. That's almost 2 deaths per day for 5 years. Why did it last so long? Because it was profitable. Because many people believed it wouldn't happen to them. Because in many Latin American countries, price matters more than safety. And because Nissan, for years, prioritized sales over human life. Even when other countries were already requiring minimum safety features, the Tsuru kept being manufactured to the same standards as in the 90s. It wasn't until public pressure became impossible to ignore that something changed. Nissan announced the end of its production, but that doesn't mean it has disappeared. Thousands of Tsurus are still on the road today, many still used as taxis, carrying lives with every kilometer, as if the past hadn't taught us any lessons. And every time one shows up, the police and automotive safety experts look at it with concern. In the United States, there's a car that can be both a lifesaver and a nightmare for the police. A vehicle that patrols the streets, but also flees from them at full speed. The Dodge Charger is not just any sedan. With its muscular design, powerful engine, and intimidating roar, it has become a symbol of power and rebellion. It's the kind of car you see in action movies, in street races, and yes, also in many police cruisers. For years now, police departments all across the United States have adopted a special version of this vehicle, the Dodge Charger Pursuit, equipped with a V8 engine, a true beast designed to catch anyone. But here's the problem. The civilian model of the Dodge Charger is practically just as powerful, and that's where the conflict begins. Many criminals choose it precisely for that reason. On the streets of cities like Chicago, Detroit, or Miami, this car has become synonymous with robberies, chases, and illegal street races. There are hundreds of documented cases where a Dodge Charger has escaped from another Dodge Charger. The paradox is that law enforcement officers use a vehicle that, at the same time, they associate with chaos. In some cities, officers report that more than 30% of high-risk pursuits involve this model. And it's no coincidence. Here, an uncomfortable question arises. Should such a fast car really be available to just anyone? The police need it to protect, but they also fear it when it ends up being part of the problem. Unlike the Tsuru, which was hated for how little it offered, the Charger is hated for how much it gives in the wrong hands. It was 1990 in the United Kingdom. A group of thieves is speeding away after a robbery. The police deploy all their patrol cars, helicopters, and roadblocks. But there's a problem. They can't catch up to them. The most humiliating part wasn't the crime itself, but that the criminals were driving a family sedan, not a race car. That was the day the authorities met their new enemy, the Vauxhall Lotus Carlton. At first glance, the Lotus Carlton didn't look like a threat. Its design was understated, almost discreet, but under the hood lurked a beast. This sedan, developed by Vauxhall, Opel, and Lotus, had a 3.6-liter engine with twin turbos, capable of producing 377 horsepower. It could reach 285 kilometers per hour and go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. For a luxury car, that was impressive. For a family car, that was insane. And for the police, that was a damn nightmare. The Carlton was too fast, too stable, and too good to be legal. The police literally had nothing that could stop it. The outrage was so great that the issue reached the British Parliament. How was it possible for a civilian to buy a car that even the police couldn't catch? Lotus's response was simple. We made it because we can, and whoever buys it should know what they're getting into. The Lotus Carlton was only in production between 1990 and 1992. Fewer than 1,000 units were made, which made it an exclusive and controversial model. Since then, many countries have tightened their homologation criteria, especially when it comes to luxury sedans with outrageous power. Today, it's a cult car, but it's also a reminder of a time when a simple car could embarrass an entire security system. 3 cars, 3 regions of the world, 3 different reasons. One was too unsafe, another too fast, and the third so ambivalent that it was good for both chasing and escaping. But what if they all shared a hidden pattern? Today we're going to connect the dots to understand why these cars have been chased, banned, and even feared by the authorities. First, power in the wrong hands. The first thing they have in common is this. The problem isn't just the vehicle, but who uses it and how they use it. The Nissan Tsuru was created to be cheap and functional, but it ended up in the hands of underpaid taxi drivers, permissive governments, and a society that didn't demand minimum safety standards. The Dodge Charger, for its part, was adopted by both the police and criminals, becoming a symbol of power on opposite sides of the law. And the Lotus Carlton, designed as a feat of engineering, ended up being the perfect tool to escape justice. In other words, none of these cars were born bad, but all ended up being misused. About boundaries. The second point. When there's no clear regulation, excesses are quick to follow. In Mexico, no one forced Nissan to include airbags in the Tsuru, so they didn't. In the United States, there's no limit preventing a civilian from buying a car with more than 700 horsepower, like the Charger Hellcat. And in the United Kingdom, the Lotus Carlton broke all the molds without violating a single homologation rule. The law came late, and when it did, there were already victims, accidents, chases, and chaos. 3. Accessibility without responsibility. A third common factor is that these cars, although very different from each other, were accessible to the general public. The Tsuru because of its low price, the Charger because of aggressive marketing and cultural glorification, the Carlton because of its aspirational status in the 90s. 4. Symbolism and culture. Finally, each of these cars embodied a social symbol for better or worse. The Tsuru symbolized the average worker, but also the brand's indifference toward human life. The Charger became the icon of the American car chase. Flashing lights, sirens, or burnouts in the middle of the street. And the Carlton was the British version of the bad boy. Elegant, fast, impossible to catch. Car has no conscience. He doesn't know if it's carrying a criminal or a family man. Can't tell if it's headed for a getaway or just picking up the kids from school. And yet, some cars end up banned, hunted down, or even hated, not for what they are, but for what they represent. So, to what extent can we really blame the vehicle? When a specific model becomes associated with deaths, thefts, or chaos in the streets, public pressure demands answers, and the easiest solution is usually to ban it. But that decision is dangerous because it shifts the focus away from the real problem. Here, we're not just talking about engines, we're talking about stories, about choices, and about what happens behind the wheel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think a car should be banned because of how others use it? Banning the Tsuru doesn't fix the lack of traffic education, the corruption in issuing driver's licenses, or the indifference of car brands toward safety. Restricting the Dodge Charger doesn't stop another Mazda del Carlo from ending up in the hands of a criminal. And making the Lotus Carlton disappear doesn't guarantee that future automotive engineering won't spiral out of control again. And what about the automotive industry? It's also fair to take a look at the brands themselves. Nissan sold the Tsuru for decades knowing it didn't meet modern standards. Dodge promotes the power of its engines with campaigns that flirt with illegality. And brands like Lotus have shown they can build cars so powerful that even the police didn't know how to handle them. So, is it only the driver's fault or also the manufacturers who sometimes sell adrenaline wrapped in a car body? Because in the end, no car is born to cause harm. What defines its story isn't the horsepower, but human decisions. And perhaps what the police truly fear most isn't the vehicle itself, but rather what some of us are truly capable of doing when we sit behind the wheel.